In Terraria's lush jungles and epic biomes lie many mysteries waiting to be solved, which makes me wonder, is the world border a portal to another dimension? Are the dungeon enemies planning to take over the world? Why are almost all the creatures trying to kill us? Let's find out. Today we're going to answer these questions and many more along the way. Let's get started. Did you know that every world in Terraria is technically an island because its edges end with an ocean? Now, you could tell me that's just the way a Terraria world is and that there's nothing else to it, but we're about to see how this simple detail is a very intentional part of each world. Have you ever wondered why they mark the end of every world, preventing further adventure? We're about to find out, so let's take a closer look at these world borders. If each world was actually a world, like a globe, then we would be able to pass one world border and emerge from the other, right? But for some reason, Terraria worlds don't act the same as Earth, where we can travel in one direction endlessly. Well, unless you think the Earth is flat. Let's think about the borders a bit more. Obviously, we can't pass them ourselves, but interestingly, the villagers can. The traveling merchant, for example, comes and goes from our world as he pleases. Each time he shows up, he has different materials that are only obtainable from him. He often sells Asian-themed items, suggesting he leaves our world and visits other distant lands before returning. And then the normal merchant actually confirms that other places exist in the Terraria universe. In one of his dialogue lines, he says, "You have no idea how much dirt blocks sell for overseas." The implications of this are crazy. Beyond this mysterious world border that we can't cross, a whole nother realm exists. There are other places with Asian settlements, home to species that will never make their way into our bestiary. And then what do you think the terrain would look like? If there's a place where the merchant can sell dirt blocks for a fortune, then wherever that is must look crazy. Think Terraria, but with huge stony mountains void of trees and other life. Small settlements growing food on soil bought from our merchant. Vast seas plagued by fierce pirates separate these continents. Okay, let's take a step back. So based on a few details, we've made a huge story about Terraria worlds. Are we reading too much into this? Maybe, maybe not. Just to make sure, let's look at the official game lore. Eons have passed since the gods first began testing the complexities of life in their fairness experiment. In this process, countless living worlds were created and now exist within the Terraria universe. Did you catch that? Countless worlds were created and now exist within the Terraria universe? Sounds like our theory was correct. Beyond the world border, there are tons of fantastic lands. But how come we can't pass the border while clearly the villagers can? Let's explore our world a bit and look for clues. As we wander through Terraria worlds, we often find abandoned structures, desert temples, underground cabins, and of course, the dungeon. Beyond just being a fun way to jump scare your friend who's new to Terraria, the dungeon is a big part of Terraria lore. The lore mentions that the dungeon was once a thriving city full of life until a curse forced all its inhabitants to go mad, and that passing travelers hear construction and screams emanating from the dungeon. If the dungeon enemies used to be citizens of a thriving city, then that means they used to be friendly. Apparently, they got cursed and went mad. Could this be why they attack players? Why almost every creature in the game is attacking us? Did the curse affect other people in the land too? Also, the lore mentions sounds of construction emanating from the dungeon. That means these mad citizens can build. Back before getting cursed, they must have inhabited the overworld, building these structures that are now long abandoned. We still don't know why we can't pass the world border, so let's look further. Something else pretty interesting about the dungeon is the enemies post-Plantera. They have a unique characteristic of holding weapons, not simple bows, but weapons of a true Terraria warrior. Guns, throwable hammers, and staffs that cast magnificent spells. Terraria has very few enemies that deal damage through the use of weapons. Most enemies just use contact damage or shoot a projectile out of themselves. Besides a few exceptions, all enemies that fight using weapons are either from invasions or they're dungeon enemies. Alright, stick with me here. So we already know that other lands exist past our own, and that pretty much everyone but us can freely travel between them. So from that, we can say that the invasion enemies come from distant lands with more or less developed technology than our own. What about the dungeon enemies though? Do you remember that they used to be citizens of a thriving city before getting cursed? Well, here's what I think. Long ago, our world was great and powerful, home to a city of mighty warriors. These warriors pillaged all other worlds and sought to take control over the whole Terraria universe. They disrupted the very fabric of Terraria, throwing it out of balance. The gods cursed these warriors with madness, and quickly, their city fell to ruin and the balance was restored. After all, the game lore does say, in the beginning, the gods established a balance to guarantee fairness for all living creatures. This balance was to be of paramount importance, with no cost too great in seeking its fulfillment. So I wouldn't put it past these gods to destroy a whole civilization in order to keep the balance. The gods sentenced these overpowered warriors to madness, which explains why they now attack us. But what about the other enemies then? Why are they hostile? It's possible that some of them are just territorial, or maybe they see us as a threat to their survival. After all, we're going around chopping down trees and digging up the world, disturbing their natural habitats. But we don't know for sure if that's all there is to it, and personally, I think there's a lot more to it than just that. Okay, let's recap on what we know so far. We know that there are other worlds beyond the borders of our own, and that the inhabitants of those worlds are also able to travel freely between them. We also know that there was once a powerful civilization in our own world that sought to dominate the Terraria universe, but was ultimately cursed and destroyed by the gods. Additionally, there are other powerful civilizations that we have yet to encounter. One such civilization resides in the Jungle Temple, home to the Lizard Tribe. They're a very interesting group. They're not mentioned in the lore, so it's a bit harder to piece things together. But here's what we do know. All members of their tribe are hostile except for the Witch Doctor, and we know that the Witch Doctor is a lizard because in the bestiary entry form it says, "It's unusual for a lizard to be outside the temple." What's intriguing about the Witch Doctor is that he attacks his own people and vice versa. Why is this important? Well, the skeleton merchant attacks all enemies except for other skeletons, so all the skeletons get along. It also makes sense that a goblin tinkerer and pirate captain would attack their own kind. They're traitors, deserters to their own people. Therefore, the Witch Doctor must be too if he's fighting with other lizards. The bestiary entry actually confirms this, which surprised me. In the entry for lizards, it says, "A reclusive race of reptilian folk found exclusively in the mysterious jungle temple." And if you remember from earlier, the entry for the Witch Doctor said, "It's unusual for a lizard to be outside the temple." So that's a cool note. The Witch Doctor definitely left his people, and he's seen as an outcast. Why did he leave? Well, I guess we'll never know. Here's one more detail though. When he's near the princess, he says, "Kind to my people, name of the princess is, much appreciated." Maybe he still sees his people highly, but then why does he attack them? We're at a dead end, let's move on. We're trying to find out why the lizards attack us. You could just say it's because we did a little bit of breaking and entering into their home, but let's look a little deeper because this might be the key to why all creatures attack us. In their bestiary entry, it says, "They look primitive, but are quite advanced." So just like the dungeon enemies, this species is advanced. They built their temple deep in the underground jungle and constructed the golem to help protect them from invaders. And of course, we come in and slaughter all of them, and golem as well. You know, it sounds like we're kind of a bad guy. We spawn into a balanced world and start breaking everything. Screams echo around us as we destroy shadow orbs. Ancient spirits of light and dark are released into the world after we sacrifice the guide using a voodoo doll to summon a wall of human flesh. Wow, I love Terraria. This game's not dark at all. After fighting the wall of flesh, the guide says, "I wonder why my predecessors spontaneously burst into flames." We literally killed the guide, and I'd gladly do it again 1,000 times. I know exactly what you're saying. The theory that we're the bad guy in Terraria has been made countless times before, but that's because it answers so many questions. It explains why all the creatures are against us. It reveals why we fight more and more bosses and why we eventually summon the Moon Lord. The official game lore, however, goes directly against all of this. It frames us as the hero, the warrior to bring balance back to the world. But the lore is simply a couple tales of old passed down by the Order of the Guide. The lore says so itself. It's not fact, it's just old fables. The Order of the Guide surely has everything backwards. We're not saving the world, not at all, we're destroying it. We are ruining the natural balance. Just like the ancient citizens of the dungeon city whose ambition caused the gods to curse them into madness. We're killing the guardians of evil, summoning dark lords and bringing chaos to our world, tearing holes in the fabric of Terraria. As we destroy the pillars of the moon gods, their curses are set upon us. Our minds go numb, we're overwhelmed by pain, and the otherworldly voices linger around us. We truly do go mad. The doom of the gods approaches to sentence us to eternal imprisonment in the dungeon. But we defeat the Moon Lord. We've grown too powerful. Our thirst for the next victory, the next weapon or armor piece, has blinded us. We've become the very evil we were meant to prevent, and we've thrown the universe out of balance. We were supposed to serve and protect our world as a servant of the gods. Never were we supposed to fight or kill the Moon Lord. Maybe I'm just being dramatic, I don't know, but there's something I like about this theory. It answers all our questions and fits really well with Terraria's status messages. It also answers one of our main questions from earlier. Why can't we pass the world border? Well, I think that the gods were testing us. They put us in one of their worlds to see if we could destroy it, or if we would guard it against evil. and in the end, we failed that test and became the evil. Whatever theory you come up with, one thing is clear. We do leave a huge mess behind in our worlds after every playthrough. The creatures attacking us are simply trying to protect their home and prevent us from causing damage. Next time you play Terraria, try not to disturb the balance. The gods are watching, after all. Let me know if you liked this video, and one last question, be honest. Does a lore narration plus explanation of its significance to the game sound interesting to you? If it does, comment about it. Also, go watch one of these videos on screen. If you liked this, you'll love them.